Hey, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Radenso DS1. This is an enthusiast design, high-performance radar detector that's essentially a souped-up Uniden R3. In my testing, it is the longest range radar detector that's currently available. Plus, it adds some features that have been missing from the Radenso Pro M or the Uniden R3, including your Autolockouts as well as Bluetooth. And so far, this is looking like a very promising detector. It's going to be launching September 1st, and it's going to retail for $399. But before it launches, I've got a bunch of information that I can go ahead and share with you guys. So go ahead and kick back, grab yourself a drink, and let's go ahead and dive into this new Radenso DS1. Now, full disclosure, I've actually been testing and running a Radenso DS1 here for the past couple weeks. The copy of the detector that I have, it is a pilot production copy of the detector, so production hardware. I've been running several different beta firmwares, as well as now the public firmware that's going to be available here at launch. Now, this is not a paid or sponsored review. I've never done those, and I never will. If you want to pick up a Radenso DS1, down in the video description, I'm going to have some affiliate links to where you can go to purchase. If you use those links, it does support my channel and allows me to continue doing tests and videos like this here for you. Now, for the DS1, Radenso has actually partnered with Attawave. It's a South Korean radar detector manufacturer who makes a lot of different radar detectors for different manufacturers. The DS1 is actually based on the same platform as the Uniden R3. However, there's some performance improvements as well as some additional features that weren't available here on the R3. Now, an easy way to think of the DS1 is it's kind of like taking the best from a bunch of different manufacturers and putting it all into one detector. Traditionally, if you've wanted really long-range performance without spending a ton of money, the Unidens have been the way to go. However, if you wanted a more plug-and-play experience, maybe you would go for an Escort to get the Autolockouts. But then if you wanted good customer service, maybe you would go to a manufacturer like Radenso. The DS1 kind of encompasses all of that and builds it all into one detector here. Now, speaking of new detectors from Radenso, I'm sure everybody's going to be wondering, what about Theia? Where's Theia? What's this DS1? And why is Radenso launching something else other than Theia? We're all excited about Theia. Totally get it. Theia is still under development, but due to the semiconductor shortage, they're not able to acquire some of the components, especially some of the more sophisticated ones, such as the FPGA. The DS1, it's not based on the same platform. It relies on some simpler components, and so they are able to source some of the parts needed here for the DS1. However, the semiconductor shortage does affect the DS1, and so for that reason, at launch, there's going to be a very limited supply of detectors. They're not able to get a bunch of them, and so the semiconductor issue affects the DS1 too, but at least they are able to get some of the components here. And so for that reason, because they are able to source the parts in limited quantities, they're going to be able to go ahead and launch the Radenso DS1. And so let's go ahead and take a closer look now here at this detector. Now, the DS1 features a single front-facing antenna. There's no second rear-facing antenna, so there's no arrows that are going to be built into here. But the horn that's available here in this detector, it's actually a Radenso-specific custom magnesium alloy horn. This is actually one of the big differences as far as why the performance is going to be a big step up compared to previous generation detectors. Now, on the front of the detector, you've got a multicolor OLED display, and it's a big display, so it's easier to read. Plus, the display works with polarized sunglasses. On the front of the detector, you've got a big front-facing mute button, and then the other buttons are on the top of the detector to change volume, adjust settings, etc. There's also a magnetic quick-release mount that's available here with the DS1 too. Now, on the side of the detector, you've got both a headphone jack that you can plug into, as well as a USB Type-C power port. The cigarette lighter power cord has a remote alert LED, a remote mute button, as well as a USB Type-A port to charge your phone. And then the other end of the cord, of course, has a USB Type-C plug, and this plug can be rotated and installed upside down if you like. The connector actually has a 90-degree bend so that you can cleanly run the cable up or down. Now, when I heard that they were using USB Type-C for power, I was a little bit concerned about what happens if the detector falls off the windshield. It doesn't have the same locking mechanism that you have with the traditional RJ11 plug, but I was happy to find that it's a pretty snug fit here, so in case your detector does fall off the windshield or something, it actually does a great job of actually catching the detector and holding onto it, especially because it's a pretty lightweight detector too. Now, something to note is that all the accessories for the DS1, including this magnetic mount and the USB Type-C power cable, are also going to be compatible with Theia in case you decide to pick up a DS1 and then upgrade to Theia later on down the line. Additionally, the user interface is also going to be pretty similar to Theia. You've got a couple different menus and some sub-menus. Now, Theia is going to be a little bit different because it's going to have a dial on the front instead of the buttons, plus it's got some features that the DS1 doesn't have, and so there are going to be some differences here, but the UI is going to be fairly similar. Now, after this, I'd also like to do another video here with the DS1, kind of showing you the different settings and menu options available here in the detector. So I'm definitely going to be covering that, but that will be in a follow-up video. Next, let's take a look at the DS1's range, its long-distance radar detection capabilities. I did a test recently with about 20 different radar detectors in a very challenging situation in the woods, picking up radar, 34/7 radar, around a bend. And in my testing, the DS1 beat out literally every single other radar detector that's currently available. That includes beating out the unit in R3, which has traditionally been an excellent performer, a great long-range detector. To make it easier to show the differences between these two detectors, let me show you a side-by-side clip featuring the best detections from both detectors so that you can easily see the differences between what both detectors are capable of. So, yeah, big difference. And again, the R3 is no slouch. In my testing, the DS1 beat out every other detector currently available. It also beat out Radenso's other windshield mount radar detectors like the Pro M, as well as the XP. It beat out your top dog performers like the Uniden R7, the Redline 360C, the V1 Gen 2. It beat out your custom installed radar detectors like your NetRadar DSP, the Escort Max CI 360, or the Radenso RCM. Now, to be fair, though, this is only one test in one course and only against one specific radar frequency. We definitely need to do a lot more testing to get a better idea of the big picture. But so far, based on some early initial testing, it looks like the DS1 here is going to be a very strong performer. And so if you need a very sensitive long-range detector, especially if you're driving in more tricky and difficult terrain, including trees and hills and curves and anything like that that can block and absorb the radar signal, the Radenso DS1 should be one of the very best detectors that you can choose at any price. Additionally, when it comes to responsiveness and quickly alerting to a signal when it's present or alerted to quick trigger, because it's based on the Uniden platform, shares the same platform, it's going to be very responsive. Plus, this has upgraded hardware, including a faster processor, which is going to be improving the response times. And in my testing, I find this detector to be very responsive. When the officer triggers his radar gun, your DS1 is going to alert almost immediately. Additionally, when it comes to detecting any very brief signals, the DS1 does a great job against that too. Next, let's take a look at BSM filtering. Again, it's going to be very similar here to the Unidens, and so your biggest sources of false alerts are going to be your Hondas and your Acuras. I also find occasionally sometimes Chrysler Pacificas. Now, a lot of your falses to your Hondas and Acuras are going to be around 24.168 or so. Now, if you run the DS1 in auto mode, that also activates a K-notch feature around 24.199. And so I've noticed when you're driving with the detector in this mode, if you come across a Honda that's transmitting in this range, the detector is going to audibly mute that signal, plus it's going to show that signal on screen in gray, and it's going to say K-notch on screen. And so there is some additional BSM filtering available here with the DS1. Now, I'd personally like to see some additional false alert filtering for some of the other frequencies that you'll get. So your 24.160, 166, 168, that's also a common frequency range here for Hondas. However, despite the fact that I know Radenso wants to do this too, after what I saw with the Uniden R7 and the issues they ran into with its release and then saying auto lockouts will be available after the first firmware update, I definitely don't want to say anything as far as things that we can expect in the future. And so right now here at launch, we've got a K-block filter that's available for your 24.199 plus minus 5 megahertz range. And speaking of your auto lockouts, those are available here in the DS1 as well. And so after you drive past the same stationary false alert several times, the detector can automatically learn those as a false alert and lock them out and filter them out for you in the future. So next time you come by, the detector stays silent and mutes those false alerts for you. Additionally, there's more memory built into the DS1 than in the Uniden R3, which is why the R3 cannot get auto lockouts. And so for that reason, you're going to have a lot more lockouts available, which is also helpful for your manual GPS lockouts as well. And the fact that it has auto lockouts is an improvement over Radenso's other detectors, including the Pro M and the XP. And then with the detector's built-in GPS, you're also going to have your standard low-speed muting, which is nice for keeping the detector quiet around town. And so as you pull into a shopping center, for example, if those shopping center door openers trigger your detector, the detector can stay quiet. This is super standard and normal. Pretty much every other GPS detector offers this too. And so you just then set your speed threshold on the detector, and the detector will stay quiet when traveling below this speed. Next, when it comes to MRCD detection, your photo radar detection, traditionally the Radenso Pro M has kind of been the gold standard to MRCD. Now this feature is available here in the DS1 as well. I don't have MRCD here in my area, so I'm not able to test it. However, when I enable the feature and I start driving around with it, I find again it behaves pretty similar to the Unidens. If there's an area where a Uniden normally falses to MRCD, I find the same false alerts in the same locations here with the DS1. Now, I know over the past couple years, the Unidens have gotten much better in terms of MRCD detection, especially in picking it up and giving you some advanced warning, and the fact that the DS1 is going to be giving you even longer distance alerts should definitely help against your lower powered photo radar sources here as well. Another improvement that I like specifically for MRCD compared to the R3 is the fact with the DS1 it has a wider K-band scanning range. With the R3 you couldn't scan any lower than 24.050, which meant you were going to be missing some of the photo radar sources. With the DS1 it can scan down a lot lower to ensure that you're able to catch the different photo radar sources that you may see in your area. Next, taking a look here at the mount for the detector, instead of your kind of traditional double suction cup type mount, it uses this big single suction cup with a new magnetic quick release mount here. I found in practice that this mount is nice and stable. I don't see any vibrations while driving, and I've also found that it works well in emergency panic braking situations too.
The sword of Gryffindor was lying at the bottom of the forest pool, barely breathing.
Now, one of the big new features with this new mount, of course, is the new magnetic quick release mount. It makes it really easy to quickly unmount your detector when you park, and then remount your detector next time you hop back in the car and resume driving. Now, Radenso's magnetic mount, it is different than Escort's Easy Mag mount, which is designed a little bit differently. With the Escort version of the mount, the detector actually completely comes off the mount and connects like this. Due to patent reasons, the Radenso version is actually a little bit different. You'll notice part of the mount actually stays here on the detector, and the mount itself kind of splits in half. And playing around with the different mounts, it seems like there's definitely some pros and cons to both styles of mounts. If I want to adjust the angle of the radar detector on my windshield, for example, with the Escort detector, I have to adjust the screw on the windshield near the detector, and I got to reach all the way up to the detector to adjust it. And when I do this, I often leave some fingerprint smudges on the windshield that I then later have to go back and clean off with Windex. With the Radenso mount, it makes it a lot easier to just pop the detector completely off the windshield, and I can adjust the angle of the mount right in front of me and then remount the detector back on the windshield, so it's easier to reach. Additionally, there's some height differences between the two mounts as well. You'll notice the Radenso mount's a little bit taller and longer, while the Escort mount is going to be shorter and more compact. And this can affect your experience if you like to mount your radar detector high above the rearview mirror like I do. With the Escort mount, for example, because this is a shorter mount, it means your detector tends to sit kind of high and tight above the rearview mirror, but it can actually be so tight that I'm not able to remove the detector from the Easy Mag mount. If I want to take the detector off, I actually have to remove the entire suction cup altogether along with the detector. With the Radenso mount, because it's longer, I can sort of remove the detector from the mount, but it kind of bumps up into my headliner as well here. It's a little bit tricky, but it is doable here in my car. Now, different cars are going to have different designs, of course, and I've tested in some other cars, and I found that in those cars, I've got no issues actually mounting or unmounting these different detectors. Additionally, with Radenso's longer mount, I found that it could potentially block a little bit of my rearview mirror and my rear visibility. Again, depending on your car design, where you mount the detector, how tall you are, etc. So your mileage may vary here. This is going to vary from car to car, but that is something that I've noticed. It is a little bit of an issue in my car, but then I tested in some other cars and it works just fine in those. So again, your mileage may vary. Plus, I've noticed sometimes when removing the DS1 off the mount, I can inadvertently actually bump it into my rearview mirror and potentially scratch it, especially if I keep doing this over time. So I got to be more careful and cautious here when removing the DS1. Additionally, if you want to remove the suction cup off of the windshield as well, along with the radar detector, I found because the mount kind of splits in half in the middle, it can kind of break away in your hands and cause the entire thing to come crashing down. So you got to be careful when removing the detector and the mount off the windshield. Now, something else cool to note here about this mount is the part of the mount that connects to the detector actually connects with the 1/4" thread right here, and you use the included Allen key to kind of mount and unmount this part right here. Now, what's cool about that is once you remove the Radenso magnetic mount, you're left with the screw thread here, and you can add, well, a bunch of different types of mounts. For example, let's say you wanted to attach a mount for an action camera like a GoPro. There's a million of these things available on Amazon, so you can literally just kind of screw it onto the detector here like this. And then once you do that, you're left with a mount connector like this that you could attach to all sorts of things. For example, motorcycle users. If you want to mount to a security motorcycle, here's a way to do it. Now, I know Radenso actually wants to include an option to where you can flip the detector upside down like this if you've got it attached to your handlebars, and that way the display will be flipped upside down and you'll be able to use the detector this way. It's not available yet, but I understand it's a feature that they want to add. When the detector is mounted upside down, you're still going to have easy access to the big mute button here on the front, even if you're wearing gloves. The buttons are going to be on the bottom of the detector to adjust volumes and settings and whatnot, so I guess make sure you get that dialed in because it's going to be a little bit trickier to adjust the settings, I guess, once the mount is upside down. There's a bunch of different mounts. I mean, here's another one that I found online and I'm trying out. It's a little bit shorter and more flush. Again, there's a lot of different mounts, so you can experiment and kind of add on something that works best for you and your particular use case. This is a feature that's brand new here for the DS1. I haven't seen it available here in any other detector, and I'm curious to see kind of how it works here in practice. Now, I've been experimenting with these adapters and combining them with the flat GoPro mounts to make the whole setup more compact and get the radar detector closer up to my headliner. And while it works when it's mounted, using the quick release clips, I find that sometimes maybe my rearview mirror gets in the way, so I have problems unmounting the detector, or I have problems actually getting it back on the windshield. Plus, these mounts rely on double stick tape, so they're going to be more permanent mounts, which is fine if you're just using one detector, but not as great if you're constantly wanting to switch between different detectors. I personally wish we had the option of a more traditional double suction cup mount like we have with other detectors, because for me this mount just creates additional problems that I'm trying to figure out how to work around. And so while it does open up different options and new mounting styles, I actually wish we still had the old mounting style available. I also wish my car was more compatible with this mount style, because trying it in my wife's car, I don't run into these same issues, and this magnetic mount works just fine, so I don't have to play around with different adapters and whatnot. And so while yes, it looks like there are some nice improvements here to this new mount design, it doesn't look like everybody is necessarily going to benefit from this updated mount. Now, the next feature to talk about is Bluetooth. The DS1 does have Bluetooth built in, so you're going to be able to pair the detector with your phone and add some additional functionality. Now, all the Bluetooth stuff, it's still in development here before launch, and so the feature is actually disabled here in my detector while I've been testing, so I can't tell you how well it works or all the different features and stuff. But Radenso's app is currently in development. It's going to be available first for Android, and then it's going to be available for iOS. When we get more information, of course, we'll post that on the forums with all the different features and whatnot that are available. Now, the next question I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, I was wondering too, OpenAPI. Yes, there will be an open API that's going to be available here for the DS1. This was something that was available first in the Valentine 1. Brilliant move by Mike Valentine to make an open API available, because third-party developers can then start creating their own apps for the detector and adding a bunch of really incredible functionality. And now the same opportunity will be available here for the DS1. Developers are going to be able to sign up for the Radenso developer program and build their own apps here for the DS1. Next up, there are a number of different audio tones available. They are customizable, and there's different ones to choose from for different types of alerts. Here are all the different tones that are available. I'm honestly not a huge fan of the included options, but I suppose this could always be changed, or I could just get used to them. Now, the next thing to note is the DS1, it's not going to be limited to being just a North American detector, US and Canada. This detector is also going to be available internationally. I don't have a full list of countries or kind of an idea as far as the differences when you're driving between different countries, but this detector will be available internationally. At launch, it's going to be primarily available in North America, but over time it's going to be available overseas. Now, if you look in the detector, you'll actually find that there's several different international modes depending on if you're driving in the United States, in Canada, or in Australia and New Zealand. Now, these menu options, they're basically just presets to change if the detector is set to miles per hour or kilometers per hour, and it changes your default time zone, which you can go in and kind of fine tune later. But it's nice to see that they're actually building in some international support here as well. Next, when it comes to software updates, it's an Attaway detector, so the update process is going to be very similar to what we've had in the past with your Unidents. Update software should be available for both Windows as well as for Mac users. I've updated my DS1 a couple times already with different firmware versions, beta, and now the public firmware version. For those of you guys who are familiar with updating Unident detectors, it'll be very similar here, updating your DS1. I know traditionally, Unident updates have given people issues over time, especially with drivers and whatnot, and so hopefully this process can continue to be improved, because this has traditionally been a pain point here when updating. And speaking of comparing the DS1 to maybe other brands of detectors, your biggest and maybe closest competitors are going to be things like the Unident R3 or the Escort Max 3. In my opinion, the DS1 is better than both. Now, compared to the unit in R3, the DS1 is going to have longer range and a bunch of additional useful features. The R3, it's going to be cheaper, of course, but the DS1 overall, yes, it is going to be a better detector. I think your main improvements are going to be the longer range, auto-lockouts, Bluetooth, and the improved build quality. Then compared to the Escort Max 3, which I think is probably a closer comparison, both of these retail for the same price at $399. The DS1 is going to give you longer range. Both are going to have auto-lockouts. I mean, they're both going to have Bluetooth, but Escort has the cloud stuff, while Radenso gives you the open API. So overall, I think the DS1 will be better than the Max 3 as well. And so if you're wanting a high-performance radar detector and you don't want to pay over $400 to get a detector with arrows, the Radenso DS1 is going to be the way to go. Overall, this seems like a pretty great detector. You've got fantastic performance, you've got a really nice feature set. I'm not a huge fan of the mount. I think it's a little bit too big for my car, but I think for most people, it's going to be just fine. I love having auto lockouts, and I think that adding Bluetooth and an open API was a very smart move. And I think it's going to be the very best detector in its class. Now, this detector launches September 1st. There's no pre-orders available, so come September 1st, you're going to be able to order both on Radenso's website as well as from Best Buy. And this detector, again, is going to retail for $399. I'll put links in the video description to where you can pick one up so that you can order on September 1st. The detector comes with a 1-year warranty and a 1-year speeding ticket guarantee. Plus, for an additional $39, you can extend both of those for an additional 2 years to give you a full 3 years of warranty plus a 3-year speeding ticket guarantee. You'll find that available for sale on Radenso's website, along with additional accessories, mounts, cables, and whatnot that you can purchase with the detector too. And so with that said, yeah, this has been an early look here at the Radenso DS1. If you have some additional questions, I know I still have more questions too, down in the video description, I'm going to link you guys to the full discussion area and announcement over on RDF where we're all talking about the detector and we're all learning more. So if you want to learn more about the detector, I'll link to the discussion area in the forums as well. I know there's also more in the pipeline for the detector as well, but I certainly can't speak for Radenso to let you know what's in the pipeline or when that's going to be coming out. And so definitely stay tuned to this channel, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll continue to keep you guys up to date on the DS1 with any future changes and updates and improvements. Plus, I've got some more videos coming out teaching you guys and showing you more about this detector as well. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.